assortment of bite-sized facts and stories that bear repeating but couldn't fill an entire episode.
Hey everybody, this is Big Randy with the Smarts Project. For years, I have provided security and transportation for some of the biggest names in the music industry.
I'm John. I've been a musician for over 20 years, playing everything from metal and punk to bluegrass and country.
We're bringing you a podcast about some of the weirdest myths and legends that the music industry has to offer. This is Tall Tales in Music Mythology. Hey everybody, this is Big Randy with the Smarts Project. Welcome to the podcast. Thanks for taking time to listen to us. And now my partner, who is a walking symphony of Tourette's, making podcasts out of pandemonium, Mr. Jonathan Glove.
Hello, everybody.
So, you got any music news, brother?
No, not really anything I can think of other than I did get a chance to go and see one of my favorite bands, minus the Bear. This week.
Oh yeah, how'd that go?
Pretty good. Almost got in a fight with a guy, but that was, other than that, so it's a very strange thing. I know you don't know who Minus the Bear is, but
you are exactly right. Yeah.
Exactly. But so they're a very subdued indie rock band, and very chill music for the most part, and. So I've been to countless hardcore punk shows and metal shows, everything like that. Gotten a few fights, obviously, over the years, but I would have never expected to almost get in a fight at a Minus the Bear show. Makes no sense. Absolutely. So, yeah, by the end of the night, one of the guys came up and was apologizing to me, so that worked out
that's
nicely.
cool.
Yeah, he was being a dick, and he realized it, so...
wow!
Oh man!
It takes a man to do that, though. It really does. I mean, everybody could be a dick, whatever. You can be a dick.
He might have just been really intimidated because I'm not a big guy by any means. But when I get pissed,
think you are.
When I get pissed, I get really pissed and
swole up like a fat bear.
Oh man, I'm screaming at this dude, and Kristen was screaming at him too. So
wow,
it was
that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, we were both ready to kick someone's asses. Great show. It was a fun time.
I'm a firm believer, and I've been in a lot of physical confrontations, verbal confrontations. I don't know if I ever said it on the show, but I usually tell people that I have a black belt in tung fu. I can talk my way out of anything because it doesn't hurt to say, hey, how you doing? What's going on? But it hurts like hell to have somebody punch you in your throat, So, but it seems like most people are really intimidated by size, and justifiably so. I think that most people are scared of size like about an 8 or a 9 when really it should be like a 3 or a 4. But I'm at a 10 whenever it comes to being intimidated by crazy. And my brother, that's exactly what your ass is.
Oh, dude, I was going off on this dude. Like, I can't repeat the things that I was like. We've gotten a little looser with letting the F-bombs go on the show here, but man, I can't. I'm not going to push that limit with what I was saying to this guy. I mean, I was just going crazy. I was
because the FCC won't let me be. Oh shit, that's heavy, man.
It was fun, but like I said, I mean, he apologized at the end of the night, and here's another thing too. So everyone knows that I'm not just being a crazy asshole. At the end of the night, as we're walking out, one of the security guards stopped me. He was like, "Dude, that guy was in the wrong. That was a bunch of bullshit. I was ready to step in for you." I was like, "Oh, okay, thanks, man. I appreciate that." And I ended up just talking to the guy for a couple minutes, but I felt really good about that for the fact that someone who was an objective outside observer was able to
professional observer.
Yeah. He was like, "Dude, no, that guy was in the wrong." So that felt good. Not that I needed someone's validation, but it still felt good to know that I wasn't the one who was in the wrong there. So.
Oh, sure.
And
Well,
all it
I
came
have to
down
say-
was I was recording a couple of snippets of the band playing, and I'm not one to sit there with my phone out all night and record the entire show because I know that's a dick thing to do. I mean, I've been in bands, I've seen countless bands talking about how that's a rude thing to do, and I can just use common sense and know, oh, hey, that's a dick thing to do. So, and one guy behind me was even yelling, "Oh, just put it away and enjoy the show." I go, "Oh yeah, thanks, asshole. I know how this shit works." And
This ain't my first rodeo.
well, that's when Kristen caught on to it. She's like, "Oh wait, hang on, John's mad at this guy. Something's wrong." And so,
Which for people that don't know John or Kristen is his trophy wife. Just this really probably one of the nicest women you could ever meet, one of the nicest people you could ever meet in your life, and I could not imagine. Thank God I haven't been in the position that I have pissed her off to the point that she has ever said anything to my face, because I believe her little ass would probably make me cry.
So it was two guys that I'm yelling at, and I was ready to kick both of their asses at the same time. And with being the tiny little wimps that they both were, I probably could have kicked both their asses at the same time. And I do not think I'm a badass by any means. But one guy was like trying to like real condescendingly like rub my shoulder, like, "Calm down, dude. It's okay. It's okay." And she starts like hitting the guy. She starts hitting him. "Don't fucking touch him." And just like, "Yeah, you like this? You like this?" She's like, just like punching him in the chest. And that dude left. I don't know where that guy went. He was gone right after that. That was the dude behind him that came up and apologized to me later. But anywho,
so I'm curious. What was the name of this band?
Minus the Bear.
Does that have anything to do with the Grateful Dead?
Absolutely not. So I talked about this in the band names episode that we did. I mentioned them. The way that they got their name was one of the friends of the band went out on a date with this girl, and they asked him how it went. And he said, "You know that show BJ and the Bear? It was like that minus the bear."
That's awesome. Wow. Oh gosh.
And their guitarist was in a really, really, really great chaotic metalcore band called Botch back in the day, that millions of bands since then have tried to emulate. But it's just very funny anytime that someone tells me they like Minus the Bear. I'm like, "Oh, did you ever listen to Botch?" And they're like, "No." I'm like, "Oh, hey, here, listen to this." And it's like going from Frank Sinatra to Cannibal Corpse. Not quite that extreme, but pretty damn close. I mean, there were no clean vocals in Botch. I mean, it was all just crazy seismic shifting time signatures and scream
like Cookie
vocals.
Monster Rock.
Not quite, not the like deep guttural, but just
do it
intense.
Do it.
Not what a Cookie Monster vocal like that, but
dude, you know what? On the podcast, so y'all, it might sound like, oh, there's like whatever he's making it, but to sit in front of that brother whenever he does it, that don't sound like that. That sounds like some shit that like a human body should not be making, you know. But
my regular scream versus just like jokingly doing a Cookie Monster vocal, those are two very different beasts, that's for sure. So,
yeah. All right, so back to the subject at hand. The Gibson guitar files for bankruptcy protection. I guess you've heard about this.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So I read a couple of articles because anybody that listens to the show knows that one of the things that really pisses me off about any kind of journalism is this cut and paste journalism that they have, that there's one really good writer with really good ethics, and that person, he or she, will write a really good article, and then everybody and their brother comes by and just butchers the hell out of it with cut and paste, and they're like, "Oh, look at this article I wrote." No, there's a difference between writing and cutting and pasting. But anyway, I read about 3 or 4 of these to get all the details on it, and there was a lot of names that was involved with this that, like, I knew these names, but like we was talking earlier, I haven't heard some of these names since like the 70s and 80s.
Yeah.
And I was really shocked that they owned them, first of all. But The company behind the iconic Gibson guitars filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection in Delaware, which anybody that's into conspiracy theories, they'll tell you, oh yeah, they did it out of Wilmington, Delaware. I can tell you the address. There's a story behind that. Y'all look that junk up if you're into it. But the Nashville, Tennessee-based corporation current properties also include Baldwin Piano, Gibson Pro Audio, and Wurlitzer. Wurlitzer was used to be famous for organs
They also made pianos, too.
way back in the day. But
my mom had a Wurlitzer. I don't know if she still has it. I think she sold it when they moved to Florida.
Right. And in fact, actually, well, I guess they're kind of excuse me, they're kind of dying out right now, because they're not making them. But
Right.
After that, Wurlitzer started getting into jukeboxes, and almost all the jukeboxes that I ever seen coming up, that's what they were, was Wurlitzer. Anytime you see, for the younger folks, anytime you see some kind of a picture of a jukebox and it's got like rainbow colors on it and stuff like that, that's a Wurlitzer. But filing for Chapter 11 protection doesn't mean that the company's doomed to fail. Instead, it's, quote, it's a way for companies that can't pay their bills to not die. Yep. So the petition filed on Tuesday notes that the company currently has up to $500 million with a B in debt, and will focus its operations on its musical instrument business, quote, unburdened by the challenges experienced by the company's separate, primarily non-U.S. consumer electronics business, unquote. So actually, I was talking to, I really don't know what is. I'm just gonna say he's a buddy of mine, but we were kind of almost related, kind of, sorta. It's like my ex mother-in-law's current husband, I guess. Okay. But anyway, Michael Roten, but he is going to be what I'm going to be in like 20 years. He is just a retired hippie, loves everybody. Hey, if you're cool, I don't give a damn what you are, but nice. I didn't, as I was researching this, I sent him the link, and he loves him some music. Right. Really hippie days. He's Grateful Dead era, Gotcha. But he read it actually before I did, and he said, "Oh, well, this is cool. They're just going to go back to making instruments." So that's cool.
That's what they need to do. That's where they slipped up.
Yeah, well, it was back in I guess it was in the 90s, that Billionaires Boys Club mentality. I don't know if you might not be old enough to remember the Billionaires Boys Club, but
I know what you're talking about.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Yeah.
So right about that time, that's whenever, greed is good and, and all that stuff. And,
that started back in the 80s, even when you want to start getting into that.
Yeah. I want to say it was probably like late 80s, early 90s, something like that. And like, diversify was like a 50-cent word that everybody used. And
you diversify your bonds.
Yeah, and you had to broaden out and own everything, own a little bit of everything, not a whole bunch of one thing. So I'm guessing that's kind of like the path they followed. And in the meantime, as they're going across, as that train's going down the track, they're losing CEOs, as they retire or die or whatever the case may be, and they're just keeping the same path going. So this is a way to stop that train and go back to doing the right thing. But going back to the article, it says. That business includes the brands KRK, Sherwin-Vega, and Stanton. And the one thing that I wanted to talk to John about before we started recording was that it's spelt Sherwin-Vega, Cerwin, but back in the days before we had cell phones and computers, you hear that name in the 80s, you heard that on the radio, and we always call it Sherwin-Vega. So I'm covering both bases. So
every forum post I was seeing was like, no, it's pronounced Serwin. So
that's and I'm sure we're probably the only country in the world that pronounces it all screwed up, But anyway, whose lines include studio monitors, headphones, and turntables. Gibson also currently holds a majority equity interest in Teak, which is what did you say that was?
Tokyo Electro Acoustic Company.
Okay.
And they're the brand that most people, well, I say most people, if anyone's familiar with anything to do with that company, what they're probably familiar with is Tascam, because that's a company who has made a lot of they made a name for themselves back in the day for inexpensive portable recording devices. A lot of bands I've seen talk about recording early demos on like Tascam 4-track recorders and stuff like that. So that's a pretty big name there. The rest of the subsidiaries of that brand, there's 3 others, and I don't even remember what they aren't nearly as big. Tascam, though, has a pretty reputable name within the inexpensive recording.
Now, see, whenever I think of teak, I remember hearing that name back in the day. I'm going to say mid to late 80s, and those were really, really shit hot home speakers.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
it was like the Bose of the day, you know.
Gotcha.
And which is funny because I just read an article the other day, and it was I think it was titled something I'm paraphrasing, but it's something along the lines of "Why Audiophiles Hate Bose."
Yeah, I've seen people say they have a joking slogan for the Bose brand, and it's "No highs, no lows, must be Bose."
That's a damn shame right there.
Yeah.
So Gibson's turnaround plans include giving some of the company's lenders equity ownership, which is a really good idea, while its lenders have agreed to an operating loan of up to $135 million to keep the company afloat.
Wow.
The company sells over 170, check this out, John. The company sells over 170,000 guitars annually in more than 80 countries, and says that it sells over 40% of all electric guitars costing more than $2,000.
That doesn't surprise me. I've owned Gibsons. My dad owned a Gibson. I had a Gibson Les Paul Studio back in the day. I mean, I love the Les Paul design. My Eclipse.
Oh yeah,
is based off the Les Paul design. I have a Charvel DS1. It's based off the Les Paul design as well. I mean, they made some great instruments, and I mean, they still continue to make those instruments, but their quality has just gone to shit in the last, I don't know, it's been going downhill for a long time, but it's seen a sharp downturn in just the last decade or so, I'd say, maybe 15 years.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because like my Les Paul Studio was a 2001, and it was one of the last ones they made that had good Grover tuners on it instead of just the Gibson's stock tuners are just dog shit. I mean, they do not stay in tune for anything. Grover tuners, though, are pretty decent as far as non-locking tuners go. And so my studio played great, sounded great, looked great, felt great, everything like that. Everything after that was just a sharp downturn. And I've mentioned this, I know, on the show before, but last year, there were 2 instances where Gibson put display models up on their website that both were damaged.
What?
So they had one, they're both Les Pauls. One of them was, and I don't even remember which model because there's a million different variations of the Les Paul, from the faded specials and the studios and the standards, classics, custom, supremes, whatever. One of them had a very clearly cracked headstock, like the back design or the back shot of the headstock. I mean, you see this very clear break line where it's been broken and repaired. Another one, the back shot of the body of the guitar has a huge gouge out of the corner, like a big old chunk knocked out of the corner of it. I mean, just really bad. And it was in, I forget, it was towards the end of last year. It was like October and December or something like that. That's irrelevant. But just in a very short period of time, they put up 2 separate guitars that were damaged as the display models on their website.
Unbelievable.
So, yeah, it's just been going downhill for a long time. And I shared an article recently on the podcast's Facebook page about Alex Skolnick jumping ship from Gibson to ESP. And, I've talked too about how a lot of artists now are not even trying to sign with Gibson, but they'll sign with Epiphone, which is a Gibson subsidiary, because it seems like the higher end Epiphones now, even though they cost substantially, I'm talking $2,000 to $3,000 less than a Gibson, tend to be a higher quality, which is
wow.
pathetic. Yeah, I mean,
how times have changed.
Yeah, I mean, you can buy the highest end Epiphones run about $1,000, brand new, maybe $1,200. Okay,
right.
The midline models of Gibsons run $2,000 to $3,000.
Oh wow,
it's crazy. Yeah, but Gibson Les Paul standard now I think is $3,000 to $4,000. I'm not sure where exactly that lands. Whereas 15 years ago, those were $2,000, brand new.
Jeez.
So they've really jacked the prices up, and the quality has really gone downhill at the same time too. So I'm hoping this restructuring will give them a chance to get their proverbial shit together, because they need to. It's bad.
Yeah.
It's been bad.
Yeah. Well, I'm really looking forward to seeing where all that's going to end up. And, there's at the risk of, waving the proverbial flag, that is like a real, honest American company. Think of Gibson and Harley and, and all that. And,
well, and I tell you what, Fender, if they're not careful, they're heading for the same road right now.
I think they did that a while back. They filed for protection, and then it just dropped.
No, dude, no. They're still doing terrible.
No. I mean, like this time last year, Fender filed for Chapter 11 protection, and then it dropped. You can't even hardly find it on the interwebs anymore.
I've seen some articles recently comparing Fender's financial woes to Gibson's. I mean, Gibson has, like you said, almost $500 million in debt. Fender has a couple $100 million. I mean, it's less than what Gibson has, but they're still doing terribly. So, I mean, now with them, they don't have, the Squire doesn't quite have the same name now that Epiphone does, but still,
right.
Hopefully they'll turn it around. They've been making some odd choices here lately with guitars and whatnot. So I feel like they're scrambling, and
they just need to focus down and get down to the basics, get down to the feng shui of it, I reckon. But this next one right now, I'm really pretty proud of this one. But Bob Dylan's got his own line of whiskey.
I saw you tweeting at Penn Jillette about that, and Penn Jillette gave you a response, which kudos for that, good sir.
Well, there was actually a little bit more than that, but
okay.
Bob Dylan filed for a trademark on the term bootleg whiskey in 2015, which caught the eye of liquor entrepreneur Mark Bashala and led to the new collection. The Heaven's Door line includes 3 whiskeys, as the New York Times report: a straight rye, a straight bourbon, and a double-barreled whiskey. Ooh. And I'm going to say this, and this is all rhetorical, because you're going to explain this to me, and I'm going to forget about it, and we're going to have another conversation about it later on. So to save that frustration on both of us, I am not a brown liquor guy.
Right.
So all of those right there, I actually had to practice saying those before we started recording.
Oh, really?
Because I didn't want to screw up. Yeah, because I don't know anything about no brown liquor.
No, I mean like whiskey and rye. Good old boys drinking whiskey and rye.
Yeah. I mean, I get it, but like as far like, it's kind of like saying, oh, well, that apple's red. And I can look at it and go, oh, yeah, that apple's red. Okay, well, I don't know how that apple's going to taste any different than a green apple, because I never, you see what I'm saying? Yeah. So, like, I get it, but I don't know. You could put one of each one of those in front of me. I could take a sip of each one of them, and they're all going to taste the same to me.
Well, to me, a rye whiskey is quite a bit sweeter than either bourbon or a regular whiskey. Okay. A bourbon, honestly, the main distinction between a bourbon and a whiskey is the fact that a bourbon is made in Kentucky. Okay.
Right.
Now, a bourbon, I feel, tastes a little, for lack of a better term, drier, a little bit more neutral than standard whiskeys, but that's kind of subjective. But
right.
As you've said before, we are not an alcohol podcast, so continue on with your story, sir.
Yeah, because this would be a lot shorter, and the ending would not be as crisp as it is now. I can tell you that. It would fade out into a bunch of snoring. So in a statement, Bob Dylan said, "We both wanted to create a collection of American whiskeys that, in their own way, tell a story." This whole thing is so Bob Dylan. But he says, "I've been traveling for decades, and I've been able to try some of the best spirits that the world of whiskey has to offer. This is great whiskey. The standard line of Heaven's Door will be on sale for $50 to $80 a bottle, which is very reasonable. If we're talking about a fifth, that is a very reasonable. That's a lot cheaper than I thought that it would be coming from that source.
Yeah, I'll give you that because, like, I'll be honest though, you can get a really good bottle of bourbon or rye for $30 to $35.
Sure, but I mean, I think that 50 to 80 would fall in the realm of normal, wouldn't it?
For Bob Dylan. Yeah, for anything else, I mean, I guess there's some in there.
High end, medium.
Getting into the there you go. The mid high range is where you're going to be getting with that.
So every year, a limited edition bootleg series will be released in ceramic bottles decorated with the musician's oil and watercolor paintings, which is so Bob Dylan. The first one will be released next year and will cost about $300.
Jesus.
Dylan has had these qualities that actually work well for a whiskey. Mark Bashala said he has great authenticity. He is a quintessential American. He does things the way he wants to do them. I think these are good attributes for a super premium whiskey as well. He added, for people who are surprised that he did whiskey, I guess they don't really know Dylan. So people who know him expect him to do things they would never expect. And that might sound like a ramble on words, but I've never worked for Bob Dylan, so I can't personally say that, I know how he is or anything like that. But the people that I've met that have met Dylan, that sounds like some shit they would say.
Oh, no, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, he's very much been one to just go against the grain and do whatever the hell he wants. That's very
And all of the people that like it fall over here. Everybody else, I'll turn around. You can kiss my ass, But so when I asked Bob Dylan aficionado and former Randy Russellberg client and no non-drinker Penn Jillette about the up-and-coming line of whiskey, he said, I've bought 3 bottles, but I have no intentions of trying it yet. Years ago, I drove Penn Jillette, probably one of 3 people I've ever drove in a limo that was taller than me.
Oh, gotcha. He is a big man.
Yeah, and that was whenever he was heavy. Gotcha. So he was... God, I can't even remember how much we didn't really, it's not like we talked about it, but this is before anybody that knows anything about Penn knows that he went on a pretty heavy life change diet. And he's relatively thin now. He's not like Manute Bol thin, but he's pretty thin now.
Yeah,
but
he's lost a lot of weight. I was shocked when I saw him after he lost all that weight.
Oh yeah. He looks good now, especially for his age. I mean,
no, totally.
Excuse me, the guy's 65, 66, wow, something like that.
Really?
Yeah, and I think he looks shit hot. But he's also like 6'7", so I come up to like his chin, but. But anyway, very nice guy. Anybody that's into Penn Jillette, he is exactly what you think he is. He's genuinely a nice guy. So, meanwhile, the Icon has contributed to a new compilation that turns classic tracks into same-sex wedding anthems. Which I love this. Universal Love was released April 6th and features the likes of Bob Dylan, St. Vincent, Kesha, Block Parties, I'm going to screw this up. Kel Okereke.
Man, I should know how to pronounce this guy's names because I love me some Block Party, but I don't know the members of that band's names. I don't.
And to anybody that's a fan of his, I really apologize. That's no disrespect intended. I just don't know how to spell his last name.
The Silent Alarm album is just a masterpiece. Sorry, go ahead.
No, okay. Death Cab for Cuties, Ben Gibbard, and Valerie June. For the 6-track EP, Dylan takes on American classics. She's Funny Like That Way, popularized by Frank Sinatra and Nat King Cole, changing the song to be He's Funny That Way. So this is just typical Dylan. And again, I've never met him. However, the people that I have met him, he doesn't care like how much money you got or where you're from or any of that. If you're cool, you're cool. And if you're not, then get the hell away from me,
Yeah, dude is legit as can be.
Yeah, yeah.
Sure.
So that's what I got for the news. And today for me is a really big day. This is our 50th episode, and I thought surely by now that one of us would have been interviewed by CNN talking about, well, the other one didn't seem like he was that type of a guy, you know. But it's a big deal for me, and we should have had the 50th episode probably 6 months ago, or maybe 4 months ago, I guess. But
I was gonna say it wouldn't have been quite 6 months, but yeah, it would have been a while ago. But we've had things come up here and there, obviously, that have kept us from being able to.
Yeah, well, I think they came up more with me than with you because the life of being on the road all the time. But anyway, here we are at the 50th episode, and I'm really proud of it. I got the best partner in the world for this, so we're going to do something a little bit different. And if you like us, let us know. Get a hold of us on the Facebook or whatever kind of social network and stuff that's out there, and let us know what you think. But we're just gonna, as we do these stories for you every episode, a lot of times I'll come across different facts or little stories that really didn't fit into the story that I was doing, and I'll put it at the end as little interesting facts that ain't got shit to do with what I was talking about. Mm-hmm. But it was just too interesting not to bring in it, not to bring it up in the episode. So what this is an entire episode of both of us just rambling on with random facts and stories of different people that we've talked about up until this point in the episodes that we've done. So do you want to hit this thing off?
No, man. Actually, I'll let you take it.
Out of pure shock and disbelief that we've lasted this long, John and I have chosen not to do a story each as we have done for the past 49 episodes. We're going to drop a bunch of knowledge on you via random facts and short stories.
Oh, yeah.
Though through social media, we heard a few ideas from our buddy Rod T, but I think getting to the bottom of the Michael Jackson sex scandal is a bit much to expect from a single episode. We're not going to break any news on the who killed Biggie and Tupac controversy, and we are limited by time even in reaching the tip of the iceberg for all the fun activities Led Zeppelin were involved with. So you're just going to have to suffice with what we have here. So thank you all for suggestions, but I think we'll stick with what we got. So the first one I got is Aerosmith. There's actually quite a bit with this one. This is the longest one that I got, okay. But it's a few little things. But Aerosmith's I Don't Want to Miss a Thing was originally written for U2, then Celine Dion.
I knew the Celine Dion one. I didn't know about U2. That's interesting. Okay.
Yeah, that was the very first one. So I Don't Want to Miss a Thing is a power ballad written by Diane Warren, performed by Aerosmith for the 1998 film Armageddon, in which Steven Tyler's daughter, Liv Tyler, starred in. Mm-hmm. And, Diane Warren is like a really fascinating person. I was really, let me just read this. In 1997, Diane Warren was watching Barbara Walters' interview with James Brolin and Barbra Streisand. Brolin said he missed Streisand whenever they were asleep, and Warren wrote down the words, "I don't want to miss a thing," before there was even a song. So what left me really surprised was how accomplished Diane Warren is. This musician and songwriter I had honestly never heard of was, I didn't know who she was, but she has written a metric or standard assload of things that everybody's heard of. If you listen to music, if you're a fan of music, you know who this woman is. Yeah. She's won 6 Academy Awards for the songs that she's written, like I Don't Want to Miss a Thing for Aerosmith, Nothing's Gonna Stop Us Now from Starship, How Do I Live with Leanne Rimes. She's had 7 different hits on Billboard singles charts by 7 different artists at the same time.
Oh, I believe it. Yeah, she's written a lot.
She was named ASCAP's Pop Songwriter of the Year 6 times for songs including Unbreak My Heart by Toni Braxton, Because You Love Me by Celine Dion, and For You I Will by Monica. She has also written hundreds of other hits with popular musicians, both contemporary and classic, including Blame It on the Rain by Milli Vanilli. I can't even believe that we haven't done a Milli Vanilli episode yet.
Yeah, I'm surprised we haven't.
I never even thought about it until I did this. But anyway, if I could turn back time from Cher, Love Will Lead You Back to Me by Patti LaBelle, Music of My Heart by NSYNC and Gloria Estefan. Music of the Sun from Rihanna. Rhythm of the Night from DeBarge. When I See You Smile by Bad English, which is an awesome song. You'll Never Stand Alone by Whitney Houston. I Love Rock and Roll. Oh, that was another one I was going to do. But that was just, I was absolutely fascinated by how she's got to be filthy rich. I mean, and the ones that I read, those are just big ones. Yeah. There's probably a list 4 or 5 times longer than of songs that weren't, I didn't think were that big. So the amount that she was involved with is ridiculous. And I've never heard of this woman's name before.
I can remember hearing about her back in the day, back when I Don't Want to Miss a Thing came out, but I couldn't have remembered her name for anything.
Is that right?
I remember hearing about her a lot, but well, I shouldn't say a lot. I remember seeing an MTV News or something a bit about her where they interviewed her and were asking her about the song. But
oh, right. Yeah. So that was I was starting out with Aerosmith, but that was a lead in to get into her. Yeah. So that's what I got for that one. Go ahead with yours.
Well, so this first fact that I've got here is kind of leads into some of my other ones as well, but it's something that maybe a lot of people don't think of. Many guitarists use unconventional items while writing or performing songs or recording as well too. For instance, Dave Navarro and many others have used vibrators as guitar slides. Others,
shut up.
No, I'm not kidding. I'm not making that up. Others have cut picks out of broken drum cymbals. Used a specially made electronic bow or any other countless number of non-standard items and devices. I wanted to throw that out there kind of just to start with, as some of my other facts will be about specific instances of these things. And as someone who loves to dissect and frankly overanalyze all sorts of music and how songs are created, I personally find these things interesting as hell, and I hope other people do too. I don't know, maybe not, but maybe there's somebody out there who'll be interested by it. And in fact, that was actually born out of me researching another small little fact that ended up becoming an entire whole episode that I'll be doing at some point later down the road. But just something I wanted to start off with there a little bit.
No, man, look at you with your little segue.
Oh,
You're so grown.
Right?
So I didn't know this, and this is one of my favorite women of all time. Another one that I've always wanted to work for that I've never met. I've seen her from a distance, like I would say 20 feet away, okay. but I've never been next to her or shook her hand or anything. But I Love Rock and Roll, but I Love Rock and Roll by Joan Jett is actually a cover. It's from a British group called the Arrows, and they did it in 1975. So the song was actually a knee-jerk response to the Rolling Stones' It's Only Rock and Roll. Lead singer Alan Merrill says, I remember watching it on Top of the Pops. I'd met Mick Jagger socially a few times, and I knew he was hanging around with Prince Rupert Lowenstein and people like that, which were jet setters, and this is his quote. He says, I almost felt like It's Only Rock and Roll was an apology to the jet set princes and princesses that he was hanging out with, the aristocracy. That was my interpretation as a young man. Okay, I love rock and roll. So it was kind of like, the way that he took it was, we both make a lot of money, rock and roll guy and, the prince and princesses. Right. We're both worth a lot of money. We're both important people. Unfortunately, I have to make my money through rock and roll, but so it was kind of like an apologist type of thing. Whereas this guy's like, screw you. Hell yeah, I'm a rock and roll guy, So, so he says, he goes, okay, great. I love rock and roll. And then where do you go with that? So the Arrows performed this song when they were the guests on the UK TV series Pop 45. The show's producer, Muriel Young, was so impressed that on the strength of this performance, that she gave them their own TV show on site, simply called The Arrows Show, which ran from 1976 and 1977 in the UK for 2 full 14-week seasons on the ITV network. It was that show, that very show that Joan Jett saw in 1976, which prompted her to acquire a copy of I Love Rock and Roll and later cover it in 1981, producing what is arguably one of the most successful covers in rock history.
Yeah, I didn't know that even, actually. Holy shit. That's pretty cool.
I used to have it bad for Joan Jett. Still do, kind of, sort of. Man, I tell you what, if Jen jumped me today, I still wouldn't have a chance with her. But I would be single, and she would still like women. But whatever. Go ahead, brother.
All right, man. So one of Pink Floyd's signature songs, Another Brick in the Wall, was influenced by Nile Rodgers' band Chic. According to Rodgers...
Shut up!
I know, right? I came across this... Actually, I think it was when I was doing the research for the Dark Side of the Rainbow episode is when I came across this, if I'm not mistaken. So it's kind of been sitting on the back burner for a while. But according to Rodgers, Pink Floyd heard the drum beat to Good Times while the band was recording it and molded the drum beat to Another Brick in the Wall around it. But other accounts have Floyd producer Bob Ezrin suggesting the band used the drum beat after having heard Chic recording the song. After some intense research, and by that I mean a few treks through Wikipedia pages and some additional Googling to verify, looks like Rodgers claimed that they were recorded at the same studio is maybe mistaken. The Wall was recorded at Power Station Studios, and Say Chic, the album Chic was recording around the same time, was cut at CBS's 30th Street studio. So he was probably just misremembering it, or maybe, Bob Ezrin. That's why I threw in that thing about maybe Bob Ezrin just happened to hear them recording it and suggested it to Floyd. But either way, it's no one's denying that definitely played a part in it, and actually too. I believe it's just the solo. I don't know if it's the solo or the whole song, but David Gilmour was actually inspired to bypass his amp and plug directly into the mixing board to record his guitar for the song as well, which back then was very unusual. Usually you would
really
plug into an amp, and even to this day, most of the time, unless you're getting into amp modeling software, most of the time you're talking about you plug into your amp, you put a mic in front of the speaker, and you go from there. And we can get into all sorts of crazy shit about, oh, hey, do you put the mic right in front of the speaker? Do you put it facing the cone of the speaker? How far away do you put it? What type of mic? Blah, blah, blah. We can talk about that for way more time than we have here. But so plugging directly into the console was very unusual. Jimmy Page did that for Black Dog by Led Zeppelin, but other than that, there's not too many instances of doing that before this. So that was another little interesting tidbit that goes along with this there.
So none of the Beatles could read or write music while they were in the Beatles. Did you know that?
No. And we've talked a little bit about that too. Like, that doesn't totally surprise me. There's a lot of musicians out there who don't really know how to read or write music in terms of sheet music per se.
Right. So, yeah. But usually they're pretty much associated with shitty music, right?
No, not necessarily. Slash, as he said, he doesn't really know how to read. Well, he probably does now, I'd imagine, but he's talked before in the past about, not really knowing a ton about music theory and things like that. So, it's pretty common. I'm terrible at sight reading sheet music. I can read it, but I got to sit there and okay, every good boy does fine. Okay, that's the nay. I've got to repeat the mnemonic device. I can't just sight read shit. So
I can almost every time, I would say 9 times out of 10, I can look at it and go, yep, that's sheet music. So the Beatles never did learn to read or write music using traditional notation, and by all accounts were happy with that fact. Music was a discovery process for them that did not involve any books. They once traveled across town for someone to teach them a B7 guitar chord.
Oh, really? Oh shit! Yeah. Okay, I feel pretty good right now because I could play a B7 right now, so that's cool.
Look at the possibilities ahead of you, man. Right now, you're more advanced than John Lennon was at that point in time. So John Lennon's mother taught him banjo chords. They lasted him through his early quarryman days until Paul McCartney showed him proper guitar chords. George Harrison, which was a very underrated guitarist, George Harrison learned guitar through lessons and painstaking practice. So I guess he earned his. But to acquire new material for concerts, mostly cover songs in the early days, they learned largely through listening to records and mimicking the sounds as closely as they could.
Right.
When it came to official transcriptions of their music, the Beatles could provide input if necessary, but the transcribing was left to others. So which of the vocal melodies in Babies in Black is the lead? Answer from Paul, both. Go ahead.
Well, no, it's just, that's a very, very good point, because there's pros and cons to learning, the traditional ways of doing things, and that's a perfect example of how being classically trained does not equal better necessarily.
Right.
Because
I could not agree more.
Yeah, and in many cases, not knowing the quote unquote right way to do things does lead to happy little accidents like that.
Yeah.
So it's a very, it's a very interesting point to bring up there. So
when classical and professional musicians were employed during recording sessions, the Beatles would often sing the melodies and George Martin would transcribe them into the sheet music.
Interesting.
So
he was the one who did. Okay, that's cool.
So he was like what, the third or the fourth, fifth Beatle?
Right.
Something like that.
Yeah. That's interesting.
So,
well, he was like the fifth or sixth.
Right.
Beatle.
So the last couple of ones I have about the Beatles are John Lennon's eyesight was so poor that he was legally blind without his glasses.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Over the years, Pete Best, Stuart Sutcliffe, Brian Epstein, George Martin, George Best, and Billy Preston have all been referred to as the fifth Beatle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was going to say I
Andy
a bunch, yeah.
Yeah. Andy White, the drummer who played on the definitive version of the Beatles' Love Me Do, never earned more than his original session fee of £7 from the track.
Oh, wow. No, that I didn't know. I knew there was a lot of people who had played with him at different points, but I didn't know that part. That's interesting.
In an official PR biography, I'm going to read this and you're going to go, yep, I believe that one. In an official PR biography, martial arts actor Steven Seagal once claimed to have played guitar with John Lennon. Further details from Seagal are sketchy at best. And anybody that's ever... Now, I will say, I've never personally watched him perform, but I've seen video of him performing or watched him on TV. And I think it's really more of a pet peeve of mine than his issues, but I really have I really have an issue with the way that people hold their guitars. Some people hold the guitar, some people wear a guitar. And to me, some people it appears that, and this is just me, this isn't influenced by any outside sources. This is just a Big Randy thing. People to me that wear a guitar are people that are more comfortable with it. Eric Clapton, Jimmy Page, blah, blah, blah.
Gotcha.
People that hold a guitar while they're playing it, that is really awkward. and if you strum with an open hand, I really have an issue with that.
Oh, gotcha.
You have never seen a flamenco guitarist play like that. You have never seen anybody picking, banjo picking on a guitar play like that. That's the way that he plays. And I'm not trying to be mean, and God knows I probably can't whip that guy's ass, and I'll take an ass whooping if he gets mad at it. But that's just the way that I feel,
I've never seen him play before. I know he can play guitar, and I know he's recorded some blues albums here and there. I know he has an extensive collection of very expensive guitars. But
yes, and I believe that he has I believe that he has an extensive knowledge of music too. I really believe that. I can't say I'm again, I've never met the man.
Right.
So I'm just saying this from, I know him like most people know him from like TV and what I've read and whatnot.
Yeah.
But every interview I've ever seen that he gives, and it's musically related, very astute, very educated, I mean, it's not to the point like I'm talking to you, but it's to the point that I'm talking to somebody like almost like a music historian. You kind of get into the mechanics and how to play it, and the third string was like made out of a different metal. That particular metal was from the Roswell crash in 19 whatever. Whereas he kind of gets more into the aspect of history of it, and I'm pretty impressed with that. But anyway, last one I got about the Beatles is in 1996, Ringo Starr appeared in a Japanese advertisement for applesauce, which is what Ringo means in Japanese. And Paul McCartney performed in the 2012 Olympics for $1.57.
What? So was that just like the amount that, like, there was like a round amount of yen and it just equated to $1.57? Is that what it is?
Yes.
Okay, gotcha.
Yes.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I think it was like their version of a buck.
It's like 1,000 yen is $1.57 or something like that.
Right. And really the story on that, obviously there's a lot more that goes with that story, but not enough for an episode.
Right.
So I had other things that had to do with the Beatles, so I was just like, that one sentence.
Well,
fine.
I mean, the Beatles, we could talk for days and days, and we have, is the thing. We've talked about the Beatles several times on full episodes,
and neither one of us are really that big I mean, I respect them. I like their music. I can't say that I'm a big Beatles head, but
me neither.
There's just so much that revolves around the Beatles, or people, groups of that ilk with whatever genre that they're in, that you can't help but reflect on Metallica or Michael Jackson, fill in the blank, Led Zeppelin. There's gonna be greats that you're gonna be. It's just the same with Nat King Cole or Louis Armstrong, or fill in the blank. Any genre you go to, there's gonna be a great that started out some particular branch of that genre.
Right.
And unfortunately with most white folks, the Beatles is that.
So the Beatles too, like so for like my generation, and probably even definitely every generation since mine as well, and maybe even some before me to a degree, it's sometimes, we've talked about this briefly here and there with different artists over the last year and a half or so, but it seems like it's hard sometimes. So much music that has been produced since the Beatles is so influenced by them that it's kind of hard to realize just how big of an impact they had on music as a whole.
Sure.
And so it's, I know we've talked about this with Hendrix before, Jimi Hendrix. Like, it's hard to listen to him now and be like, oh, that's amazing, because so many people have aped what he did. That it's become de rigueur to be a smart ass, to be a fancy bastard about it. But you know what I mean? It's the same thing with the Beatles. Like, you listen to music now and then you listen to the Beatles, like, well, that's not a big deal. You've got to put yourself in the mindset of that era and be like, okay, nothing was like what they were doing. You listen to Rubber Soul or Revolver, other albums from the mid 60s, or you listen, their output from the mid 60s, and you listen to other albums from the mid 60s, and none of them sound anything like that. So that's,
I think for younger folks, and I mean, not to say that old folks don't do it, but I think the younger that you are, the more predisposed you are to judge things in the past, like past meaning prior, your generation or your life, by your standards now. And I wasn't, I mean, I was alive whenever Jimi Hendrix was playing, but I mean, I was definitely more into drinking milk and shitting than I was into listening to music. I was just a baby.
Right.
I might have been, I think I was like 4 or 5 whenever he died, but you listen to but I'm old enough that I can remember listening to Jimi Hendrix. Like I remember listening to Jimi Hendrix on the radio. I remember listening to Led Zeppelin on the radio.
Right.
Whenever it was fresh,
When it was current.
and
yeah, exactly.
yeah, and the one that really comes to mind is Eddie Van Halen during Diver Down. That was during that time, Diver Down in 1984. And my own, subjective opinion, were two of the best albums ever. Not from just them, but ever, in rock history. Those are two of the best albums. But that's just my opinion. Everybody else has their own opinion, and my opinion is just as valuable as theirs. But, I remember whenever I wanted to learn how to play guitar, that was my mentor. That was who I looked at, like, okay, well, Eddie is guitar god. That's who, and justifiably so.
Right.
If you were listening to his music, of course you're going to respect, his guitar playing. Right. But now you got kids on YouTube that are 9, 10, 11 years old, and they're busting out Eruption, or, I remember, excuse me. I remember. I think I sent you a link of Brad Paisley playing "Hot for Teacher."
Oh yeah.
That was, and I mean, Brad Paisley, excellent, very underrated guitarist.
Yeah,
but those are you hear those things now. You got 12-year-old kids that are playing Jimi Hendrix now. Mm-hmm. Well, if you would have taken that 12-year-old kid and thrown his ass in 1974, I mean, he would have been Jimmy Page.
Yeah,
he would have been Eddie Van Halen.
Absolutely.
But people just learn so much faster now. It's just different. The motivation is different. Mm-hmm. The world is different. You don't have as, you can be less distracted if you have your mind set on it right now than back in the day. Because back in the day, you didn't have as many distractions, but you had stronger distractions, like, take the garbage out. Well, I'm playing guitar. And, well, okay, well, the next thing you heard was a belt coming off of the britches, because it was getting ready to connect with your ass. You can't get away from that shit. Now it's like, I'm playing guitar, whatever. So anyway, it's just a different world now, and I'm sure there's something that's taken that place now, some kind of instrument, some kind of, maybe it's some kind of shitty mumble rap or something like that people are doing now, that 20 years from now, that the kids that are 16 years old now, whenever they're almost 40, they're going to be going, no, let me tell you, want to know good mumble rap? Yachty was good mumble rap, man. These brothers don't know how to mumble rap now. Let me put on some good mumble rap for you, or whatever it is. It's just a cycle. It's always changing.
Yeah, and a lot of things like that are exponential. There's, when it's first discovered, there's a huge uptick in, the expansion of the technique and the genre and everything like that. Because at that time in the 50s and 60s, hell, electric guitars had really only just been invented in terms of mainstream popularity. We talked about the Fender Broadcaster, later known as the Telecaster, coming out in the very early 50s. And for all intents and purposes, those were the first electric guitars, per se. So, yeah.
Shit, I remember watching Jimmy Page. It was a video that I seen. This was before, I want to say it was before cable. It was on broadcast TV, but somehow, and obviously, if it was before cable, it was before MTV and VH1 and all that stuff. But somewhere I had seen a clip of Jimmy Page taking a violin bow to a guitar, and I was like, he's a madman. Who would have ever thought of that? Now you look at this guy, look at this moron with a
that's amazing.
And fiddle bow.
Fun fact there too, one of the reasons why one of his guitars, I don't remember if it was his 58 or his 59 Les Paul, one of them was missing the cover over the bridge pickup, and that's why, is because he hit it with his violin bow too many times.
Shut up, is that right?
I can't remember which one, and I should know that, but I don't. Whatever, who cares? I apparently have killed that part of my brain with whatever at some point.
Welcome to my world.
So
go ahead. I just finished my.
All right, man. Cool. So this band just put out a new album a couple weeks ago, and I'm not a huge fan of the band in general and not a huge fan of the new album, but whatever, it's good timing for this. So a Perfect Circle guitarist / primary songwriter Billy Howardell met singer Maynard James Keenan while Billy was Tool's guitar tech during their Anima tour. Maynard James Keenan being the singer and frontman of Tool. He let Maynard hear some of the songs he'd written, and Maynard offered to provide vocals if Billy ever wished to start a band in earnest. And the band has released several albums since then. So yeah, it's a little interesting tidbit there. That's how they met. Billy actually started off as a guitar tech for Nine Inch Nails. Back in the
now Maynard is the guy that has the winery, right?
Correct. Caduceus wine.
Rogan talks about him quite a bit, and I think they were actually going to get together. Rogan had this thing, this was a while back, but he had this thing, he's really into like all natural foods and all that stuff, and I mean all natural, like let's go out in the woods and get it our damn self type of thing. But he was making like I forgot the name of them, but anyway, these meat trays like from elk sausage and shit like that,
gotcha.
and really kind of different kinds of cheeses, like made from like goat's milk or just different real, not even artisanal, just real cheeses.
Asiago.
And he won. I'm sorry,
Asiago. It's a type of cheese.
Yeah. I was trying to think of the. I was trying to think of the. Charcuterie trays. He was making charcuterie trays, but out of like elk and deer bison. And whatever. Yeah, other things that he puts holes in. Right. So he wanted to get together with somebody that owns a vineyard, and I think Maynard owns one, but I think it's in Nevada, Arizona, or something like that. Okay, and then he had. Anybody that knows anything about alcohol knows what Napa Valley is. And anyway, she bought a hunk of land that was just land. It's just dirt. Okay. Then she went over and built a relationship with some vineyard in Italy, and they had something like 800-year-old vines or something like that. And they had a special name for this. And I want to say it was like heritage grapes or hermitage grapes or something like that, but they had a special name that people that are in that in the know like that they have for that. But anyway, it was like it was there's zero provenance. This like no, this is the vine that was here whenever Rome was conquered or whatever, So yeah, there's zero provenance. This is the same plant. It didn't come from another plant. This is the plant, So anyway, it reminded me a lot of like stud fees with like former Derby horses and stuff like that. So apparently people from all over the world, they go to these vineyards in Italy and they'll say, oh, I'll give you, there's so many ridiculously rich people now, especially from the Arabic areas, that they'll I'll give you hundreds of millions of dollars, and all I need is like one plant or something like that, and they turn it down because they actually have ethics, business ethics, and so
business ethics.
So anyway, she built a relationship with this one farm over there, and apparently they let her buy it or give it to her or whatever, and now she spent 10 years. She hired this guy to be the groundskeeper in Napa Valley, and she spent the past 10 years growing this vineyard, and it's just now getting to the point to where the vines are mature enough that you can get wine and get it bottled and all that stuff. And she's like, okay, it's all I wanted to do was just start a vineyard. I'm ready to sell it now.
Really? Wow. I mean, it's smart on her part, because you can just sell it as Danica Patrick's wine from here on out in perpetuity.
Yeah, but it's kind of like,
it's cheap in my opinion, personally, and that's not insulting her by any means.
No. I don't think it's
smart business move. It's a brilliant business move on her part.
Oh, absolutely. I have zero doubt of that. The problem I have with it is from a selfish standpoint. It's kind of like. Okay, in Virginia Beach, we have this place. It's called Captain George's, and it's a seafood buffet. Okay, there's certain times of the year like Saturdays, that you stand in line for 45 minutes or an hour before you can even get to the cash register and get in there. Okay.
Yeah,
So it's kind of like you're waiting your 45 minutes or an hour in line, and then it's your turn and you're like, nah, screw it. Let's go to McDonald's.
Yeah. Right.
But it's like, you go through all the hard stuff, and then you can't sit back with your own wine and go, we made this,
Right.
So,
right.
Anyway, so let's see who went. I got off on a tangent.
I actually do have another bit here. So staying in line with the previous fact, Maynard James Keenan, Tool's frontman again, worked on a collaboration with Nine Inch Nails brainchild Trent Reznor once upon a time called Tapeworm. Yeah, I know, right? The project also involved numerous other collaborators, such as Phil Anselmo from Pantera and Tommy Victor of Prong, but label disputes brought the project to a halt. However, 2 songs, Vacant and Potions, have been released as Passive and Potions Deliverance Mix by 2 of Keenan's other projects, A Perfect Circle and Pucifer, respectively. Reznor originally had some publicly stated reservations about the release of Passive by A Perfect Circle, but seems to have come around. And interestingly enough, that is probably my favorite APC song, and when I first learned about 10 years or so ago that Trent Reznor helped write it, it made much more sense because that song sounds absolutely nothing like nothing else by A Perfect Circle.
Wow, really?
Yeah, it's a great song, and I'm trying not to talk shit, but I feel like most of A Perfect Circle's work is just kind of overwrought, overthought, just try hard, for lack of a better term. That sounds bad, but it doesn't feel organic. It feels very mechanical. It feels very robotic, music by numbers, so to speak.
Right.
But that song is actually, it's a solid song. So when I heard that Trent Reznor was involved with the creation of it, I was like, oh, that makes more sense now. Just because, like, Billy Howardell is a phenomenal guitarist, do not get me wrong, and he clearly knows music well. I mean, having been a guitar tech for Nine Inch Nails and Tool, both. But his music just seems formulaic is a term that gets thrown around too often, but that's a good way to describe a lot of their music. So,
right.
It makes more sense knowing that Trent Reznor, someone else, was involved with the creation of the music of that song in particular. So, yeah.
So on the same tip of our previous news about Gibson, Leo Fender, who developed the first solid body electric guitar and electric bass guitar, never learned to play either instrument.
That doesn't surprise me.
Orville Gibson, founder of the Gibson Guitar Corporation in Kalamazoo, Michigan in the late 1890s, has only registered one design patent. And
Really?
that was it was for the first archtop mandolins he made.
No kidding. I didn't know that.
Yeah, whenever I read the one about Fender, I was like, huh. And then I read the one about Gibson, I was like, shut up. Right? I checked it out.
Now, here's what simultaneously fascinates / pisses me off about that. So I've mentioned this before as well, too, sometime on the podcast, that back in 2003, 2004, Gibson sued Paul Reed Smith over the development of Paul Reed Smith's new single cut guitar, because Paul Reed Smith up until that point only made double cutaway guitars, meaning there's a cut above the neck and a cut below the neck.
Oh, okay.
Whereas a Gibson Les Paul is a single cut, meaning the body comes straight into the neck on the top side and is carved out below the neck.
Right.
On the bottom side of it, Gibson sued Paul Reed Smith over the design of the single cut, saying that it infringed on the design of the Les Paul. Well, if they didn't have a patent on the Les Paul design, how in the hell can they sue anybody? I never knew this before about the patent thing. So that really, really annoys me, because especially if you play a Les Paul, and I've played in addition to owning a Les Paul, I have played numerous other Les Pauls and Les Paul styled guitars, obviously, throughout the years. And a Gibson Les Paul plays absolutely nothing like a Paul Reed Smith single cut.
Now, is this something that people like you could tell, or even somebody like me could tell?
I feel like if I put a guitar in your hands, if I put a Gibson Les Paul, any Gibson Les Paul, standard, studio, classic, custom, whatever, doesn't matter,
Right.
and then put a PRS single cut in your hands, I don't feel like you would, especially if they were of the similar. So I'm not saying like, oh, let me give you this $5,000 Gibson Les Paul and this $700 PRS single cut. I'm talking like pretty close to apples. You know, if we put close to the same level, you're going to tell a difference. I feel like even just average Joe off the street, you're probably going to tell a difference, especially in the neck shape. Because Paul Reed Smith has a very distinctive style. Now, no, never mind. I was about to say I haven't played a PRS single cut since 2003, but that's not true. I've played a couple others since then, fairly recently too, even. But yeah, no, they don't feel anything alike, and I mean they don't even really sound that much alike, which is kind of interesting for two guitar brands that use humbuckers as their main pickup style. Like comparing a Fender to a Gibson, those are two completely different things. It's not quite apples to apples. It's more like maybe apples to pears. You know, it's a little bit closer, or I mean, it's not like comparing apples to oranges. It's more like comparing apples to pears. That's what I'm at there. Because a single coil does fundamentally sound drastically different than a dual coil or humbucker guitar. But even at that, for two guitars that both use humbuckers, they sound pretty differently, like significantly different, but they feel drastically different. They do not feel the shape of the neck, the width is the biggest thing. A Paul Reed Smith is a pretty wide and very thick necked guitar, and it feels nothing like a Gibson. So,
you know, let me throw in this one little fact before we get done with the guitar things. If you ever wondered how much money the recording industry makes, and anybody in the music industry will tell you that the recording industry, even now, makes a shit ton of money as compared to other people that are involved in the process that probably deserve a little bit more. And it's so easy to pull out the Taylor Swifts and, oh, look at all the money that she's got, and you know, the whatever, you know, whoever the big name is, Jay-Z's and the Beyoncé's and all that. Yeah, great, they got a lot of money, but you don't understand all the shit they got to pay for it too. So and I'm not saying that they're not hurting. They're not hurting. Okay, that's definitely, but you don't understand the shit they got to pay for it too. But for every $1,000 of music sold, the average musician makes $23.40.
That sounds about right.
As absolutely insane.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, it's crazy.
So anyway, I had that one little thing. Go ahead with yours, man.
Oh, okay, cool. So my next bit is about Neutral Milk Hotel's 1998 psychedelic folk magnum opus, In the Aeroplane Over the Sea. So the album in general has a lot of very memorable and outstanding songs, but my personal favorite has always been the 8-minute epic O Comely, which is, for an 8-minute long song, actually does a pretty damn good job of not ever getting boring, despite the fact that for most of it, for I think at least the first 5.5, close to 6 minutes of it is just strictly the singer and an acoustic guitar, nothing else.
Wow.
Oh, great song, man. Check it out when you get a chance. Just pull it up and listen to it.
What was the name of it again?
O Comely. Neutral Milk Hotel is the band. Their album In the Aeroplane Over the Sea is the album. It's track 8 on there, actually, if I'm not mistaken. But legend has it that singer/guitarist/primary songwriter Jeff Mangum was supposed to just be recording a scratch track, or just a rough take for those unfamiliar with the term, but ended up recording his entire portion of the song on the first take.
Oh, shit.
And this led to someone in the control booth, either producer / the Apples and stereo leader Robert Schneider, or Neutral Milk Hotel and the Gerbils member Scott Spillane, depending on whom you are talking to, yelling, "Holy shit!" audibly in the background as the song ends. And you can hear
I remember you said that. I remember that.
I have mentioned this before on a previous episode, and I had always heard it was Robert Schneider. I've seen a few random forum posts here and there, and actually a show called Parks and Recreation, whatever, on NBC back in the day. That is a kind of a spiritual successor to The Office because it's the same creator, Greg Daniels. One of the characters on that show, April Ludgate, which is played by the lovely Aubrey Plaza, actually her character is a huge fan of Neutral Milk Hotel, and someone, I don't think it was Pitchfork, but I could be wrong, did a fake review of the album through the eyes of her character. And she talks about that song and says that it was Scott Spillane of the Gerbils who was yelling that, but almost every other source I've ever found claims it was Robert Schneider. Regardless, someone yells "holy shit" in the background after he's done recording it, so very interesting.
That's funny. So Eminem's The Real Slim Shady was written 3 hours before the final cut of the album was due to the recording company.
Yep.
This was one of the last songs recorded for the album. Eminem was under a lot of pressure from his record company to come up with a hit single to get radio play and lead off the album. Something similar to what My Name Is did for the first album. Exactly. And there's two things that really drive me apeshit. There's a whole bunch of things, but two things I'm going to bring up right now is, whenever you got somebody that has some cockamamie scheme and they go, okay, look, this is how we're going to make it big. We're going to record a video. All right. We're going to make this thing go viral. You understand me? We're going to make this thing go viral. Okay,
generally speaking, if you use the word viral, you have no grasp of what that concept means. You should not be saying it. That's all there is to
it. So there's that, and then there's some lame brain record executive. Come on, okay, all I need is one hit single. Well, first of all, you're coming out with an album. Okay, if you're coming out with an album, you have 5 to 9 songs on an average album. So
usually more than that.
Really? On an album?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
How many's on an average album, you think?
12. It's not a matter of how much I think, it's how much I know.
Okay. Yeah. That even makes my point more. So 12 songs ish on an average album. Okay, and then you got some knucklehead come by. Okay, look, all I need is one big hit single to lead off this album.
Yeah, that's.
So that person that's recording that album, say it's like Eminem or whoever, they're hoping every damn song on that album is going to hit gold at least. So it's not like, oh, okay, well, I'm going to have this one hit single and then I'm going to have, 11 B-sides. No, they're really hoping that every single one of them is going to get triple platinum up into diamond or something. We'll beat the hell out of Garth Brooks' record with this one. This is all I'm asking, so that you have this one hit single. So God damn, it just drives me crazy. And they make it seem like it's so so easy while their fat asses, just sitting back, whatever it is that they're doing. Oh, Jesus Christ, it makes me so angry. But anyway. After working on the beat for most of the day, it came together with Eminem's keyboard and bass player were jamming on the drum track Dr. Dre had programmed a little earlier in the day. Once they had the beat, Eminem put lyrics to it, and all the kids who were dressed and acting like he did. So the next morning, Eminem came to the studio and recorded the vocals. Kathy Griffin, who appears in the video, is the voice at the beginning that announces, "Will the real Slim Shady please stand up?"
Really? See, I actually thought that was him saying that.
Yeah, that's what I thought too. So at the time, she was known for her role on the TV series Suddenly Susan. Even today, Eminem has gotten lots of mileage out of the jabs at celebrities in his songs, and he got plenty of attention here with the lyrics implying that Christina Aguilera had oral sex with Carson Daly and Fred Durst.
And him. too.
Yeah, Christina Aguilera denied this and called Eminem a pig, which didn't seem to bother him real terribly much.
Oh, no.
At the 2002 MTV Music Awards, Christina Aguilera presented the award for Best Male Video. And when Eminem won for Without Me, she didn't seem very happy. So the judge...
It's funny because I remember Kathy Griffin from Seinfeld rather than Suddenly Susan. So that's interesting.
Oh, yeah. The judge who sentenced Eminem to a fine and community service for pointing a gun at a road manager of the Insane Clown Posse told him in court, "Now is the time to please stand up." A reference to his line, "Will the real Slim Shady please stand up?"
Yeah.
That's a real fan right there.
he also wrote about that incident on that same album, too, about the ice.
Oh, that's right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So that's what I got on him. Go ahead, brother.
That's funny. So more guitar related factoids here. The Gibson SG, another brand we recently talked about at the beginning of this episode, may be most famously associated with Tony Iommi of Black Sabbath and Angus Young of AC/DC, but it was originally designed for the father of my personal favorite guitar design of all time, Les Paul himself. In fact, the SGs produced from 1961 to 1963 were labeled as Les Pauls, with his name even on the truss rod cover to replace the original design of the Gibson Les Paul. The guitar was designed without Paul's input, and even though he detested the design so much that he ended his contract with Gibson over it, it still has become Gibson's best-selling model to this day. Which surprises me, considering how revered Les Pauls are and how they're one of the few guitars you'll find used in pretty much every genre of music, from country, blues, rock, and metal. But the SG, which stands for Solid Guitar, for those unaware, was indeed a Les Paul when it first was born. So... very interesting.
I think we talked about that before too, haven't we?
Yeah, it's one of those things where I've kind of mentioned it in passing here and there. Just because I like to talk about, random related guitar
stuff,
shit like that. So yeah, exactly.
So to talk about a couple of Virginia Beach heroes, Neptune's producer Pharrell Williams is a huge fan of science fiction series Star Trek. Hence his consistent use of the Vulcan salute to signify his label name, Star Trek, which is Trak. Every Neptune's written track on Justin Timberlake's debut album, Justified, with the exception of Like I Love You, was actually written for Michael Jackson.
Oh, whoa, I did not know that.
Yeah. A very young Pharrell wrote a verse on the 1992 single, and alongside future Neptune Chad Hugo, the pair have since done other production duties on various Teddy Riley projects, which Teddy Riley is a big name in Virginia Beach, and he's associated with Virginia Beach. He was actually born in Brooklyn, but he kind of picked up roots and came out here, and one of the oldest high schools out here is Princess Anne High School, and years ago he had a recording studio that was literally in their front yard almost. Well, in their side yard, I guess, actually, and burnt down quite a few years ago. There's a church there now, but he's Teddy Riley's big influence out here, and obviously now Pharrell and Chad are too. Chad, I think, is living out in L.A. right now, but Pharrell has something going on right now called The Wave, and it's a gosh, I don't even know what you call it, but people that are familiar with old Virginia Beach, talking about, say, from the late 80s and back, will remember the Dome down by the oceanfront. And where the Dome was, Pharrell is just getting ready to break ground right now on, and this is totally off script, I'm talking about this off the top of my head, but he is been approved for a project, and I don't know how big it is, but it looks like it's, I'm going to say probably 10 or 12 acres, which down on the oceanfront in Virginia Beach, shit ain't cheap.
No,
yeah,
hell no.
But it's going to have movie theaters, music venues. There's a wave pool out front. There's going to be, yeah, I mean, it's a multi-million dollar. I would venture to say it's probably going to get up past $1 billion, probably, by the time everything's said and done.
Right.
But I'm really looking forward to it because as we speak right now, what's the date today?
The 7th, May 7th.
So today is Monday, May 7th, and tomorrow, the morning of May 8th, which is going to be in the past tense by the time y'all hear this, but I actually have a meeting with one of the people, the Virginia Beach School Board, and we're going to do the final presentation for the Smarts Project, and then it's going to be presented to all of the school board after that. And looks like we're probably going to be hitting the ground running for the school year of 2018-2019. And the reason that this is kind of a big deal for me is because in Virginia Beach itself, there's really not a lot of music venues. We have the amphitheater, which is actually right around the corner. In fact, during the summertime, I can actually open up my window and I can tell you who's in concert. Nice. That's how close we are to it. But that's really all we got for a music venue in Virginia Beach. And so we have 11 high schools in Virginia Beach. So it'd be really nice if we had our kids from our high schools, the choirs and the bands and whatnot, that are performing at a concert venue in Virginia Beach instead of having to go to the Coliseum in Hampton or to the Scope in Norfolk or wherever it might be. And if we decide to do like some kind of seasonal show, like a Christmas show or something like that, it's a little tough to talk people into sitting in the snow or in the rain or in the ice, out at the amphitheater, so it'd be really nice to have multiple concert venues at this place. So that's kind of a big deal to me. So, okay, that's all we're going to do for this one. We're actually going to break into a two-parter. We had such a good time researching all this stuff that we ran long. Plus, we went off on multiple tangents. So, and this is without the benefit of alcohol. So,
speak for yourself.
Well, for me anyway. Yeah. Next time I'll get tatered. You be sober. So, anyway, that's half of our story, and we're sticking to it. We'll do a part 2 on episode 51. And so, go ahead with your closeout.
Yeah, anytime you guys have a music myth or legend you'd like to hear us talk about on the show, you feel free to reach out to us on social media. You can find us on Facebook at Tall Tales of Music Mythology, or on Twitter at T2M2 Podcast, or you can email us at T2M2podcast@gmail.com.
And you can always find out about the Smarts Project on any of the big social media, and you can send us messages on that. Well, I would love to hear if you have any questions about the Smarts Project and what we can do for your music departments in your high school, in your area. And now more than ever, be kind to each other. Tell your kids you love them while you got them. And whatever you do in life, never be a myth.
Always be a legend.
Love you. Bye.
Bye.
Hey, what's up?
It's Nathan.
It's Farron.
It's Don't Quit Your Daydream, a podcast with people with skills, hobbies, passions, and
dreams.
Oh, yeah. And what kind of people is that, Farron?
We've got sound designers,
Blacksmiths,
bicyclists,
professional wrestlers,
historians,
musicians.
Anything you want to be, anything that you are, tell us about it.
Yes. And you can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, wherever you get your podcast from.
Dig in, listen.
Simply by searching DQYD.
Podcast.
Yeah, new episodes every Tuesday.